Que lo que mi gente, welcome to the Monoplaza F1 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Emi Bertre, and this week we are going to cover the Belgian Grand Prix. All right, hey, let's get into it. First and foremost, congratulations to Lewis Hamilton and Lewis Hamilton only. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. Yes, after an incredibly hard fought race, surprising race, that ultimately saw the two Mercedes teammates duking it out. Not really. Lewis Hamilton is awarded and is the rightful winner of the Belgian Grand Prix, albeit after some disqualifications by his current teammate, George Russell. Get into that a little bit later. But yeah, congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. That's win number 105. That breaks the previous record held by Lewis Hamilton with 104 record wins. So yeah, Lewis is at 105. And I'm going to start by saying I do not care. I do not care how he got the win. All right, first of all, had George Russell not decided to take matters into his own hands and try to give himself a winning strategy, which frankly, I don't fault him. I'm also not surprised by him for doing it. I do not care that George Russell was disqualified and Lewis Hamilton was awarded win number 105. A win is a win, dog. Hey, a W. And by the way, I 100% feel like Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, was in PR mode. You know, when he puts out his statement, always the elder statesman and says, hey, not how I wanted to get the win, crushing for George, but hey, it was a hard fought race. There'll be more in the future. Keep your head up. It's like, keep your head up, champ. I don't care. There are many people out there who said, I would have wanted Lewis Hamilton to get that win a different way. I'm sure he felt differently. No, no. Hey, a win is a win is a win. And so we go into the summer break with Lewis Hamilton being the only driver besides Max Verstappen to win multiple races in the 2024 Formula One season. So, yeah, we're going to cover Lewis Hamilton's 105th victory. We're going to cover George Russell's. Honestly, we're going to cover George Russell's great race and calling his own shot and how that worked out for him. Obviously, we're going to cover Lando Norris. We're going to cover Oscar Piastri. We're going to cover Charles Leclerc, Sergio. Wow, I can't believe I just said that with an English accent, by the way. Sergio, Checo, Perez, El Viejo Sabroso. We're going to cover Checo. Because there's a reason. We're going to cover Max Verstappen and we're going to cover Red Bull. And I don't know if it's drama going over at Red Bull. Frankly, I don't really care. They'll figure it out. We'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get started on all that, as of today, in terms of the recording, congratulations to Carlos Sainz. Just signed a brand new contract with Williams, finally putting everybody out of their misery. So we are left with an open seat at Alpine, which I think should go to Jack Doohan. We are left with an open seat at Visa Cash App 2-for-1, which more than likely they are going to re-sign Daniel Ricciardo, although it wouldn't surprise me if they signed Liam Lawson, dump Checo over the summer, and put Ricciardo in that seat. I don't know why they would do it, but hey. Uh, Great. And that leaves an open seat for Mercedes, with the expectation that Kimi or Andrea Kimi Antonelli is going to be the driver that will be filling in that second seat. By the way, while we're on the topic of Kimi, there's a clip. I'm going to put it in post. So note to myself to put this in post. There's a clip of Kimi with a suicide pass on Franco Colapinto in the F2, the feeder series race at Spa. He did this disgusting pass on Colapinto going up Eau Rouge. I don't know if that's how you say it correctly. Nobody judge me. Spanish is my first language. English is my second. French is not one of them. Disgusting, fearless pass by Kimi Antonelli. So shouts out to him. And again, look for him to fill that Mercedes seat. So again, Alpine, RB, Mercedes, and Audi or Sauber, Kick Sauber, is in need of a second driver. For Sauber, honestly, if they want high caliber drivers, they honestly should just resign or re-sign um, Valtteri Bottas. And if they want money and a lot of it, then they should resign Zhou Guanyu. I said what I said. I don't apologize for that at all. But yeah, again, congrats, Carlos Sainz. It makes sense. Audi is kind of a disaster class right now. They wanted him for multiple years, and it's probably going to be a long time before they're actually competitive. Whereas the upside to Williams is that they finally got the new upgrade to the Microsoft system, so their Excel spreadsheets are going to be busting for the 2025 season. No, in all seriousness, they're a Mercedes customer, and so they are well positioned for the 2026 season with the rules regulations that optimizes the engine and the power units. Um, Williams being a Mercedes customer means that Carlos Sainz is good. Not to mention that the contract that signs, the contract that he signed is good at least until 26, and so that gives him an option to say, hey, where's Audi at? At that point, hopefully Sainz will have done something. Otherwise, he may be stuck in the lower leagues for a really long time. So yeah, silly season is upon us. The summer break is upon us. We go into the summer break. If you're a Mercedes fan, if you're a fan of Mercedes, if you are a fan of that team, you are going into the summer break on a high, because going back all the way to Canada, I believe that is 6 podiums for Mercedes, and I believe, is it 6 for 6 or is it 6 for 7? It's an insane um, just back to back to back to back podiums. And then in the last, out of the last 3 races, Lewis Hamilton has won at least 2 of those, podiumed on 3. So, yeah, it is great to be a Mercedes fan right now. And that is where I'm going to start. So, obviously, as the team has continued to rise and the success of Mercedes, James Allison doing his work, Lewis Hamilton doing his job, George Russell doing his job, many have continued to ask, and it's a lazy question. Like, if I'm being really really honest, it is a really lazy question, because many have begun to ask, is Lewis Hamilton regretting moving to Ferrari? First of all, no. Now, personally, I don't know Lewis Hamilton personally. I would love to know Lewis Hamilton personally, but what I do know about him, his public persona, and the little tiny glimpses that he gives us into his private persona, he doesn't make a move in false, right? Mercedes is where they are for several reasons. When the new regulation started, Mike Elliott decided to take the team down a path that did not make sense. And instead of recalibrating, they decided to stick with that zero pod, minimal pod, invisible pod concept that clearly led to porpoising, clearly led to no results. I digress. Sorry. Let me go back. It led to one George Russell victory, which, as many of you had stated and speculated, it led the team to believe, yes, this is a concept that can work. We're going to keep it for 2023. That was a disaster class. James Allison came back, fixed that second half of the 2023 season. 2024 season started, and the car was not super great. The first several races have been terrible, and then Canada happened, and from Canada onwards, the team has been super successful. Now, does Lewis Hamilton regret moving to Ferrari? Absolutely not. Not even a little bit. At all. At all. The question we should all be asking ourselves, I'm not personally asking myself this. Okay. I am asking myself this. Does Mercedes regret letting Lewis Hamilton go? Case in point, if you all go back to the beginning of the season when the car was not doing well, the future leader, the future leader of this team said, hey, this car was made to the specifications of Lewis Hamilton. The insinuation being that you all see this car, it's buns, it's basura, it's trash. And you know who we have to blame for that? Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, the team listened to Lewis, and that's why the car is trash. Well, George, look at the team right now. Yeah. And so, with the help of James Allison, he cooked. Honestly, they should have never let him go build boats. But hey, passion project, do whatever you want. Great. Um, awesome. With the help of James Allison and Lewis Hamilton's input, the car is where it is at right now. And I say Lewis Hamilton's input because realistically, and we've said this for 2 years, Lewis Hamilton was the one running all of the setup experiments in that car, literally causing himself self harm to get the best results out of that car. The team refused to listen to Lewis. James came back, said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We have Lewis Hamilton. Why are we not listening to Lewis Hamilton?" And when they finally listened to his input, the driver input, right? And many people speculate, hey, they're drivers, stay in your lane. We're engineers, stay in your lane. But the ones who have to drive the engineers' creations are the drivers themselves. So it would behoove them to at least listen to the input. The drivers may not be able to technically tell them what is wrong with the car and what would help the car be fixed, but the drivers do know what you've created feels weird. It feels weird. It's doing this, it's doing that. And a great engineer will take that input, make it more technical, and figure out how to do it. Prior to James Allison arriving, they weren't listening to Lewis. And it wasn't until it was probably too late because they spent 2 years in purgatory doing this, right? 2.5, maybe? I don't know. Doing this before they realized we got to totally scrap this concept, right? Awesome. They did. This is directly tied to Lewis Hamilton's input because, as far as I know, George Russell wasn't running experiments, right? Anyways, case in point, does Mercedes regret not re-signing Lewis Hamilton and not giving him a contract that was worthy of somebody who had given so much to the team? Because of a symbiotic relationship, right? But I would venture to say that Mercedes got more from Lewis Hamilton or more advantage from Lewis Hamilton: money, sponsors, accolades, popularity, a growing fan base due to Lewis Hamilton. And instead of saying, hey, we're going to do a swan song and we're going to let you have a 2-3 year contract and then we'll figure it out at the third year. If you want to go somewhere else, we can. This is our plan with Kimmy. No, they said we're going to do a 1+1. A 1+1, and we're not going to make you a brand ambassador. Mercedes, as many of you Lewis Hamilton fans, Mercedes fans have said, they fumbled the bag. They fumbled. And John Elkin and Fred Vasseur were there to pick up the piece and said, Lewis, we still believe you got it. Come join us. We'll give you everything. If you want vegan pasta at the cafeteria Maranello, we got you, big dog. So Lewis is there. So going back to my original point, does Lewis Hamilton regret leaving Mercedes given that they are becoming successful now? No, absolutely not. Lewis from the beginning has said he wants to leave on a high note. He feels like he owes it to the team and the people working at the factory to give his best, which up to this point he has. And so now circling back to my previous comment, the team is going to miss Lewis Hamilton. I do believe that when they replace him, and let me change that word, when they substitute him for whoever it's going to be, again, most likely it's going to be Kimi Antonelli, it will be interesting to see if George Russell can give them the same type of input and feedback at the level, because there's levels to this, at the level and the minutia that Lewis Hamilton was able to give that team. He knows what it feels like to drive a championship car. He knows what it's like to win. He knows how to be fast. And clearly, from the last 6 or so races, it is obvious that Lewis Hamilton still can drive fast. He still has it. People who say he's washed, just admit you're a hater. All right. It's okay. Embrace it. You don't like Lewis Hamilton? That's on you. You don't like Lewis Hamilton fans, but you like Lewis Hamilton? That's kind of weird. Okay, whatever. Every fan base is different. Case in point, when Lewis goes to Ferrari, he's going to talk about Mercedes like he talks about McLaren now. No love lost there. But when he leaves, Mercedes is going to realize we should have done more. And the reason I feel that way is because even though George Russell is the one that is going to remain, it is very apparent by the way that freaking Toto Wolff talks that he doesn't feel like George Russell is that guy. Otherwise, why is he trying to openly court Max Verstappen? And why is he focused on Kimi Antonelli? Search your feelings. You know this to be true. I think George is an excellent driver. I don't know if he's the leader of a team. He considers himself a number one driver, and that's great. It's great when drivers have that type of confidence because, hey, you're going to need it. But he's not that guy. And it's not me that's saying it, it's Total Wolf with his actions. And what's that old adage say? Actions speak louder than words. George was that guy. They would have signed Carlos Sainz. They would have sent Kimi to Williams to get his money up, just like Ferrari's doing with Oliver Behrman in Haas. And they would have had George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and put Sainz on a 2-year contract or however long they felt they needed to get Kimi right. But the fact that Toto is saying, I would rather risk it with Kimi now or Verstappen now, just tells me those actions. Because I'm a person who just, I watch what you do and not hear what you say. Toto's actions let me know that he does not believe the team is in good hands with George being the leader. Now, that's a great segue into what happened during the race. So the race starts, and I'll be honest, probably the most surprising thing to me was that Checo Perez did not bend the car. He made it all the way through. He almost had pole via inheriting it from Max Verstappen's grid penalty, but he was usurped, what a funny word, by Charles Leclerc, who continues his run of most poles without converting him into a win. Love Charles. Love Charles. Hate that he's attached to that record because the kid is fast, but he is unable to convert these poles into wins. Not his fault. Ferrari's taken a step backwards ever since they brought upgrades. I am not technical enough at this point to explain to everybody in an intelligent way why that is. Apparently, neither is Ferrari. And so, in any case, the surprising thing for me was Checo qualifying as high as he did. And granted, with Checo, I know he is capable. I think he's in his own head a little bit. Talked about it last episode. Um, you know, I'm not going to say he's washed, but I think the pressure is perhaps getting to him a little bit, right? Cool. So the starting three is Charles Leclerc pole, Checo Perez behind him, Lewis Hamilton third, and then Ferrari's, McLaren's behind, right? I'll be honest. I was one of those who thought, based on free practices, based on how Max Verstappen was doing during that qualifying, because he actually qualified on pole, but the grid penalty sent him to 11th. I thought this is going to be a Red Bull 1-2 bare minimum. Checo is for sure going to finish second. Max Verstappen is going to be P1 by the third lap, fourth lap, fifth lap, whatever it is. And I was so surprised, so surprised at the non-existent pace by the Red Bull. So the race starts. Lewis Hamilton does a great move on Checo. I don't think Checo was really like expecting the Mercedes to be where it was. And honestly, if you watch the replay, the best camera angle is the one from the rear of Charles Leclerc's car, where you see the battle between Lewis Hamilton and Checo Perez. And this is why I'm saying that Checo is not washed. He's just kind of in his head a little bit. But you see those two battle it out, get really close to each other, don't make contact. Lewis eventually comes out ahead of Perez, and like that's all she wrote. At that point, I felt as I was watching the race, okay, it's Perez, so whatever. Lewis is great, but eventually him and Charles will eventually lose out to maybe Red Bull, most likely McLaren of Piastri and Norris, right? That was never going to be the case. As I watched the race, Lewis eventually put the move on Charles Leclerc, and as we would later find out, because nobody had any raw, I mean, Pirelli had given all the teams the data on the tires and the compounds that they brought, but nobody really knew, hey, how does this tire perform in the dry? How's the medium in the dry? How's the hard in the dry? What's the best tire for Sunday's race, right? So Lewis started on a medium, and he quickly made light work of Charles Leclerc, got some free clean air, and was leading the race for the first stint, right? For me, this is where kind of like the drama started. As I'm watching the race, Lewis is telling Bono, hey, these tires are good, but the team pitted him anyways. Now, we would later find out that I believe the team had said to both drivers, the strategy is going to be determined by whoever is in the front. More than likely, it's going to be Lewis. But if it's you, George, we give precedent to you. But when Lewis was leading, the strategy that he preferred was the one stop strategy, right? And so Lewis is going, Bono's telling him, hey, box, box. Lewis is like, I feel like these tires are still good. And normally, like, when Lewis says that, I believe him. I don't believe Lewis when he says these tires are gone because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's code. Beats me. Anyways, and so what ended up happening, Lewis pits, everything happens. Eventually, Lewis pits for hards, right? Somewhere along the way, with everybody pitting from Piastri to Leclerc to Norris to uh, Sainz, whoever, some from all of those people pitting, George Russell also pits, right? So now we're on the second stint, right? At that point, everybody had done at least one stop to get a new set of tires, right? So same thing happens. Lewis is on the hards. They're saying to him, hey, we're going to box you this lap. Lewis again says to the team, hey, these tires feel good. I really think that I can make them last to the end of the race. The team said, no, two stop strategy. Come on in, Lewis. Let's get you some new hards. While that was going on, George Russell decided, I'm going to call my own shot. The team had predicted that on the two stop strategy, best case scenario for me, I would end up in fifth place. But these tires feel good. I feel like I'm still got speed. I'm nursing it, blah, 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 blah. This, that, and the third. And ultimately, what happened was the team did not say to George, no, George, Lewis has that strategy or whatever technical way they were going to say. They just stayed quiet and it was on. So, what I would say is George Russell has a habit of, I'm going to call it literally calling his own shot, right? And what I mean by that is that George will oftentimes see something that could potentially benefit him and somehow tries to make that seem like it is also to the benefit of the team for them to give him the preferential strategy. I have not yet seen a strategy that George Russell calls for himself that works out. If you're going to call your own shot, some of those have to work out. At some point, somebody in the team gave George the green light to say whatever he wants. And it was only, what race was it? There was only one race that I can think of where they pitted George and they asked him, hey, are we going to swap positions at the end? I believe it was Spain. And the team was like, no, not at all. And even then, I feel like George was trying to still stay out. I've said this on this podcast a lot. George Russell is, in my mind, more concerned with beating his 8-time world driver champion teammate, Lewis Hamilton, than he is about excelling the team, propelling the team forward. That's great, that's fine, whatever, but don't try to dress it up as I am doing what's in the interest of the team. No, sir, not at all. You want to win. Say that openly with your big chest, top of the mountain. I want to win. That's okay. I can respect that more than, hey, we should think about doing this, or we should think about giving each other DRS like Sainz did to Norris, blah, blah. No. And so, if the team is going to continue letting George call the shots, I was already questioning their strategy. I was already questioning their decision making skills. But for me, what has George Russell done except for win one race in Brazil, right? And another one that he truly inherited, if we're going to talk about inherited, that has made the team say, yeah, George, go for it. And so, yes, at that point, George decides to call his own shot and says, let's think about the one stop team. Through their silence, green lights it. Okay, sure. So Lewis pits, Lewis comes out, Lewis passes everybody. And for me, I thought that the pace and the number of laps left, Lewis was going to overtake them. But as has been said on other podcasts that I've watched, which I agree with, one thing is catching, another thing is passing. I would have thought that at that point, given the wear of those tires and the degradation because they were significantly older, that Lewis would have made light work of George. Now, later on, we find out that, hey, the car was actually lighter. And whether it was because of the fuel or whether it was because of the tires. And here's the thing, unless you're there at the Mercedes briefing, all of us content creators just have theories, right? I don't know anybody at Mercedes. I don't have a cousin's wife's girlfriend's sister. No. So it was either the team removed upgraded parts and they didn't recalibrate everything, so the weight was always going to be off, or it was, George never replaced his tires or pitted for new tires, and so he wore them down. And because Spa is the track that there is no cool down lap, he wasn't able to pick up any marbles. By the way, Fernando Alonso also did a one stopper, and he at least had the wherewithal to stop and pick up some rubber pellets on the way in. Would that have been enough? No, my point is George being 1.5 kilos lighter than Lewis meant that his tires are degrading at 0.05, while Lewis and everybody else were degrading at zero point 0.1, right? So that was about 4/10, maybe 5/10 of a second, which was coincidentally enough what he needed to be able to stay in front of Lewis. On top of Lewis couldn't get past him in dirty air. But ultimately, I feel like the main reason Lewis Hamilton didn't end up passing George on track, aside from all of those things, and sorry to finish the previous thought, we all have theories as to why George was underweight, right? None of us, unless we work at Mercedes, know the true reason. Until Mercedes comes out in a report and says, this is why George was underweight, everything is speculation, right? The one I'm sticking with, sure, tires. He did not pit, but it doesn't make sense because all the other people who pitted or did a one stopper like him, which were 5 other people, none of them were underweight. So do with that what you will. Anyways, the reason I believe Lewis did not pass George Russell is because, unlike George, if you're a George Russell fan, I promise you, I sound like the biggest George Russell hater, but one of the things that I do is self reflect a lot. And if you truly, truly, truly self reflect and look at George's actions in these 3 years that he's been at Mercedes, you start to see a pattern emerge. All right, just be honest. He's a talented driver. Just be honest, right? Okay. The reason I feel Lewis did not pass George on track is because it would have led to a catastrophe. There is no way, based on how George was racing, and the team had given them the okay to race, just give each other space. There was no way George was going to let Lewis pass. If Lewis had been really aggressive, it could have ended in disaster with one or both of them being knocked out, and then Piastri passing them, going to P1, uh, Leclerc on podium, P2, and whoever was behind Leclerc, P3, right? Lewis is at a point in his career where it's not that he's not aggressive, it's just that he's more, in fact, just thinking about the team. He cares more about what's happening with the team than just individual statistics. It's clear because he could have left sooner, and I'm sure Mercedes wanted him to retire sooner. Maybe that's why they were getting crappy cars. But the point being is that, like, I don't see a way, given how much his tires had degraded trying to catch up to George and how much lighter George was. Again, 3 pounds doesn't feel like a lot, but in the world of aerodynamics and F1, that is literally the difference between first and second, literally, right? And so, whatever, the race ends, George wins, Lewis ends up in 2, Piastri P3. The other thing that was kind of pissing me off, Piastri finished super close behind Lewis, right? So there was also the likelihood that had there been more laps, Piastri probably could have passed both of them. And ultimately, George would have been disqualified. So not only did they cost the team the win, it would have cost Lewis the win. Again, do with that what you will. All the previous statements, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. All right. As it turns out, once the race was over, you could tell Lewis was seething, right? He's trying to be diplomatic about it. Congratulations to George. Congratulations to the team. Super excited about that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, hey. Lewis Hamilton, the man that you are, always humble. All right. George, super excited. They panned to Toto, and Toto, I'm sure, did not know at the time that George would eventually be disqualified. But I think Toto understood. I just screwed over Lewis for no reason. That was the face, right? I forget what the username is, but there's definitely one tweet that I saw where the person posted that video of George, and honestly, it did remind me of Toto's face at that moment. Reminded me of when my dad has to apologize to me. Like my dad made a mistake, and now he's got to apologize to his son. That was the face that Toto made. Hey, all I'm saying is that sleepover at his house with him and George is going to be Ako Taco. Anyways, eventually it would be found out that George's car was 1.5 kilograms underweight. He would be disqualified, and Lewis would ultimately end up winning the race and getting win number 105. But I'm a little bit miffed. I'm not gonna lie. We were robbed of a podium that included uh, Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc. We were robbed of a cool down room because that cool down room after the race was so whack, so whack. Albeit my son Oscar was there and Lewis was there, so that was cool. But Lewis was pissed and trying to be mature. Funny how, by the way, funny how Lewis reacted. See, he wasn't mad at Oscar. He didn't react how Lando reacted last week, in spite of the strategy not being in his favor. Do with that what you ah. Anyways, and so we were robbed of that. We were robbed of like 105, but at the end of the day, I frankly do not care because Lewis Hamilton got win number 105. A win is a win. No technicalities in my book. If your car is illegal, your car is illegal. All right. But we were robbed of a Hamilton Leclerc Piastri podium. Cool. Awesome thing that happened on Sunday was I didn't have to hear the Dutch national anthem. And that is a great little tidbit. This would be Max Verstappen's fourth race without a win. This hasn't happened to him since 2019. I don't know. This season's pretty good. Makes me think that next season is going to be even better, which sucks because I wish that they would leave it one more season with all the cars being even, but 2026 and we're going to be back in the cycle again. I really wish that they would make the rules period a lot longer, more than 4 years, maybe 5 or 6 years, to really give us like more competitive seasons. But hey, Liberty Media, if you need any ideas, that was a good one. All right. Okay. So again, congratulations to Lewis Hamilton and Lewis Hamilton only. I'm kidding. Congratulations to Mercedes as well. Obviously, they move up in the constructors. Lewis also moves up in the driver championship, so that race is heating up. The person who stays atop is Max Verstappen, and that is a great segue into Red Bull. So Red Bull, I thought, was going to I thought they were going to dominate, but that wasn't the case. And things have been troubling at Red Bull for the last several races. It feels like the car is not as fast as it used to be. It feels like the upgrades aren't working how they're supposed to work. And it feels like Max has to be doing everything. I'm not going to regale y'all with all of the tales of what Checo Perez is and isn't doing, but it is fair to say that Max is basically in a constructors battle with McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, and he's in a championship battle with everybody below him. He was able to stay atop of Lando Norris because he finished ahead of Lando, so he still sits comfortably at the top. And barring any catastrophe or barring some crazy run of wins, where one driver, whether it's Norris or whether it's Hamilton, who by the way is the only one besides Verstappen who's won multiple races this season, it's Max Verstappen's to lose, right? We have 10 races, so something mathematically he's not the champion yet, but something crazy would have to happen for him to lose. And the next race is Zandvoort, which is his home race, and I think it's one where the Red Bull car runs really well. Whatever. What was surprising to me was that the pace was not there for them on Sunday. The only thing that I could think of is that they had no real data of how the car was going to run in dry conditions, and they hadn't set up the car in a way that would guard against tire degradation. So maybe that's one of the reasons. But regardless, the showing by Perez, he went from second to eighth, and the team first, they when him and Max were fighting for it, they pit Perez to let Max through, and the second time team orders, I'm sure Max just went through and on his merry way. But he went from P2 to P7, P8 on track, P7 after the disqualification of George Russell, right? And so after the race, it was speculated that, hey, the big heads at Red Bull are going to meet and they're going to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to replace Perez after the summer break with Ricardo or a Lawson, whatever. And I thought that was actually going to happen because after the race, Ricardo and Max left in the same helicopter. But yesterday they put out a statement that said, nope, he is here to stay. Now, they didn't specify whether he was here to stay next year, but they for sure said that they were not going to replace him this season. Now, if you are Alex Albon and you are Pierre Gasly, how must you feel looking at Paris? Like, what does Paris have on Christian Horner and Red Bull? Like, it can't just be because Perez has Carlos Slim money, right? Like, does he have like the WhatsApp messages that are like truly incriminating? Like, does he have? I don't. Frankly, it's witchcraft at this point. Like, Paris still on that team is witchcraft at this point. Now, I don't know if replacing him with Ricardo is any better. I don't know if replacing him with Lawson is any better. And I don't think throwing Lawson into that would be good for Lawson's career and his development. Honestly, I think that Lawson is at RB, but I will say this. If RB resigns Ricardo for the next season, I don't see Lawson entering F1 with that team. All right, they're just playing around too much. But Checo is staying on Red Bull because Christian Horner likes Checo. All right. It's there. Everybody can see it. Whatever. So they cemented that. And you know what? Shouts out to Checo because he left Spa Francorchamps. Spa Franco. I told y'all, French. Mercy. Checo left Spa with the fastest lap. All right, Max left Spa with points ahead of Lando Norris. So whatever is going on at Red Bull is great for everybody who's not a Red Bull fan because it means that the season has been competitive. So I'm not gonna complain. No, not at all. No. I'm not a Red Bull hater. I'm definitely not a Red Bull fan. What this is highlighting to me is that I'm sorry, Max Verstappen's talent, you have to give him credit. All the crash tap-in memes aside, all of the way that he drives, he is better than his competitors, barring one, Lewis Hamilton. I'll stand by it. My podcast, I can say what I want, right? But again, shouts out to him because he's able to stay ahead of Lando, stay ahead of Leclerc, stay ahead of the people closest to him, and just continue to churn out these points. And literally all he has to keep doing is that while Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren keep taking points away from each other for as long as it's not somebody who continues to win and that somebody is the same person. So again, whether it's Piastri, whether it's Norris, whether it's Hamilton, as long as these people don't start stringing together races. So Max has 7 this season, Lewis has 2. I'm not going to feed in the delusion. I'm not that delusional. But again, the only person who could pose a challenge, and it will get interesting, if Lewis ends up on the podium or if he somehow pulls out a win, then it starts getting interesting because we've still got Austin, we've still got Brazil, we still have Jeddah, we still have Mexico, perhaps, right? So it's just interesting, right? And even Las Vegas is going to be interesting this year, I think, right? So I don't know what happened to Red Bull. I don't know why they fared so poorly. They've been bringing upgrades since Japan, and those upgrades have not really panned out. Meanwhile, I think McLaren, who honestly hasn't really brought that many upgrades, they brought a big one back in May. They're bringing upgrades after the summer break. So Zandvoort, I believe they're bringing upgrades. So we'll see what happens. But again, congratulations to Max Verstappen for still being the world driver champion elect. And congratulations to Checo Perez for whatever voodoo santeria he's got going on. He will not be sent packing. He is going to stay on the team for this season. For this season. All right. Again, so the next competitor that they have is the McLaren team. Now, McLaren is interesting to me because I criticized them a lot for their strategy last season or last week. And I criticized Norris in particular for just like his performance. He's not that guy. So I'm not going to go off on a tangent on Norris, but it is another week where his start is not super great. And I believe that Norris has about 1, maybe 2 years of being the number one driver, and 2 is generous because Oscar Piastri, once he tightens up the tire degradation, Oscar's got that dog. My son, Oscar Jack Piastri, I have more confidence in him than I do in Norris, who has been in McLaren in F1 since 2019. To me, Oscar, once he gets that tire deg under control, he's got everything it takes to be a world driver champion. And many have said that he is the second coming of Kimi Räikkönen. I think he's just Oscar Piastri. All right, I think that's just how he is. Like, I'm not comparing him to any other driver, but my problem now again is I'm not going to go off on a Norris tangent. Okay, all I'm going to ask y'all is if you watched a replay, all right, who caused Norris to go wide on the first turn? What ghost caused Norris to go? I don't understand it. All right, I don't understand it. So I don't know. In the other side of the garage, Oscar Piastri ran an incredible race. Almost caught Lewis Hamilton. Definitely, he was able to pass Charles Leclerc. I think he got that victory under his belt. I think it's making him a more complete driver. He always does well at Spa, and I say that with like he only has one season under his belt, but I think in F2, F3 did well in Spa as well. But McLaren, the strategy wasn't even really the problem. I think the drivers more or less showed their performance. Oscar outqualified Lando this race. Oscar had the better start than Lando. Oscar did more with that car than Lando. Lando was not able to do anything against a Red Bull that I previously had stated was not fast. So the question I have to ask all of y'all, at what point does the team say, all right, Lando, we gave you this opportunity, and now we're going to shift our focus to Oscar. And I think Oscar is quietly making his case for, hey, I'm the team guy. I'm making the team plays. But we're not that different. Look at the times I'm putting. Look at how I handle the pressure. Look at how I'm doing this, that, and the third. Right. And so Lando Norris fans, I don't have beef with Lando. Honestly, you can call me a hater. You can say I'm jealous. Yeah, I'm jealous. He's a freaking billionaire, millionaire, whatever. I don't care. Lando Norris, to me, will not win a world driver champion. If he ever does win one, which I think he will not win one before Oscar Piastri wins one. And for me, Oscar is next. Oscar is the up and coming one. Oscar is the one putting down the times. Oscar is the one with the ice in his vein. Oscar is the one who is cool under pressure. Oscar is fast. Oscar is fast. All right. He's fast. I'm sorry. And so after several weeks of Lando Norris saying, I made a mistake here, I did this, I did that, this is really tough, blah, 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 blah. It's like Tasha said last week. When somebody who's self-deprecating says something, after a while, we are going to start believing you. And I believe Lando now. All the things he's saying about himself, yeah, it's probably true. You say it about yourself. So we'll see what happens. Again, McLaren, I think, is still in contention to get the Constructors' Championship, which is great. Wouldn't surprise me. They have on a good day, they have 2 drivers who are bringing home points. They have a car that's capable of getting 1-2s. Now, who's in 1 and who's in 2, that's fine. I don't know, right? Those upgrades have worked miracles. We'll see what happens once they start putting in more upgrades in there, right? But Lando, for me, has been found wanting. Oscar Jack Piastri, for me, has been found as an up-and-coming guy. So, yeah. And then lastly, I just want to touch on Charles Leclerc and the race that he had. That car had no business getting pole. I know he inherited it. But what an amazing, tremendous drive by Charles Leclerc. Finally breaks the string of bad race systems. Monaco finishes in the top 10, finishes on a podium. So, like, congrats. I think Ferrari has an opportunity to upgrade the car, but I think what we will see from now until probably Austin, that Ferrari car maybe is not going to be super impressive. I just hope they get it right for next year. And if not, good thing Lewis Hamilton is coming for your team because he will give you the updates and the technical feedback that will make a race winning car. So yeah, just a small shout out to Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, who again is going to Williams. Yeah, so other than that, this was actually a pretty exciting race. It proved that the one stop could work if you know what you're doing. It proved that Red Bull is being blackmailed by Checo Perez somehow. It proved that Max Verstappen is doing the most with that car. It proved that more than anything, Lewis Hamilton still has it in him. I think he is on for more wins this season. All right. He is on for more wins this season. I think, if anything, he's probably going to be a little bit more paranoid with that team. He's probably going to be a little bit more aggressive with George. Good. I'm glad. Um, he's on for a couple more wins. Who knows? Maybe I let my delusion go unbridled and he'll pop off and win 8 out of the next 10 or 6 out of the next 8. I don't know. So yeah, and now it is time for me to come to my pariguayos and my matatan. So for me, my pariguayo of the race is going to be Lando. No, I'm gonna have to give it to I'm gonna have to give it to Checo for this one. You started P2. The car was not fast, but the car was fast enough to at least stay within the top 5. Going from P2 to P8 is just, it's not good, but hey, congrats. You are able to stay on Red Bull. And my matatan for the race is obvious for me. It's going to be Lewis Hamilton with a sprinkling of Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton, again, proving that he still has it. And by the way, I'm not the only one who thinks he had matatan. He was also voted driver of the day. So, haha. Anyways, so yeah, Pariguayo, Checo Perez, and Matatan, Lewis Hamilton. And now we are going to be on summer break. I'm going to try to put out some videos throughout the summer break. I've yet to figure out what that is exactly, but stay tuned. It'll be there. As always, if you're watching this, please, please, please comment, like, subscribe, and thank you, by the way, to all the new followers. Wow, yeah, I forgot to say that. I always make a joke, but I got a lot of new followers last week after I posted that, so thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But yeah, comment, like, subscribe. As always, 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 don't forget to tell your mommies, your papis, your tios, your tias, abuelos, abuelas for the Monoplaza F1 podcast. This is Emi Bertre. Peace.